Congratulations, you've unlocked All Apologies, a show about apology tours and demanding satisfaction. I'm your host, Trucker Andy, and with me, as always, is your co-host, Joe Sixpack. Joe, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm live from down Woke Dad area here today. You'll notice I got my sepia tone. I'm coming from cowboy times here in the past here, but don't forget to go to allapologies.com to find all the links to our Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. Please go there, like, subscribe, contribute to Patreon if you can. $5 subscription. They have the $3 singular episodes now. You can pay $3 and get just the New Girl episode, because I know that's really why everybody wants to pay for $3. But yeah, Rumble Rants, PayPal, Aaron Inholt. No, that's none of that's real. I almost nailed it, Andy, right?
You fucking idiot.
We don't have Rumble. We're not on Rumble yet.
Oh man, Joe, I'm glad you're coming to us. You're coming to us from woke country because we're covering woke culture in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah. So we had to bring in the expert on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, my All Apologies correspondent of the Cinematic Universe. It's Christian Bladt.
Hooray!
Very excited to be here, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. Very excited. And yes, if you're talking all things woke, have me check in from one of the wokest cities in America, Los Angeles, California. And there may be some wokery in the MCU in recent years.
Maybe.
But, in general, there's a lot of things I continue to be happy with, and some things that are infuriating. So I'm excited
to hear about the things you're happy with.
Joe, Christian has been watching Agatha all along so that we don't have to. That's mainly why I had him on, because I was checking out his take on that series because I refuse to watch it. So.
Well, and that is clearly a show, and the panel that I do. So I do a Marvel show called Marvel Movie Talk for a network called Geekscape, and whenever there's a Marvel show, we'll do like weekly reaction shows. It's really fun when what you're talking about is X-Men '97. And it's not fun when what you're doing is Secret Invasion, which may or may not come up in this conversation, but one of the just biggest misfires ever in Marvel history. And Agatha All Along. I think my panelists and I continue to watch it just so we can hang out once a week, because I don't know that any of us are enjoying it anymore. And in fact, at our most recent episode, I'm not sure how long until this posts, but the 5th episode of Agatha All Along had actually 24 minutes of content, which technically this is an hour show. Sometimes it's 48, 49 minutes. And because they gave us so little, I put all of us in little boxes at the bottom of the screen, and I had a huge countdown clock that I was like, well, we can obviously talk about this in 23 minutes. And we did it. We hit our goal. We didn't get rich off Streamlabs, but yeah. And look, Agatha All Along is a show for someone. I just don't know who that person is.
It's the same people that liked the witches in that stupid Disney Star Wars one.
The Acolyte.
The Acolyte.
Yeah, although I think that there are more people enjoying Agatha than the Acolyte. I think the Acolyte had people who were like giving it credit because it was Star Wars. And what I said at some point during that show is that everybody owes an apology to the people behind the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. All right. Because that was so much better than the Acolyte. But yeah, I think
Baby Leia.
Yeah, God, no, Baby Leia is terrible.
I mean, if you see her in the first Star Wars, the way she talks to Darth Vader and she's so annoying, I believe that 10-year-old girl grows up to become Princess Leia. So I'm all right with that.
It's not the child actress's fault. I liked how you started when you said, "Well, the Agatha All Along is clearly a show," and you could have just stopped there. It's like
this is a show. This is not a show.
It is this is not a show.
It is a show. It's on TV, and that's maybe the best thing you could say about it.
And look, I liked Catherine Hahn as Agatha in WandaVision. I thought it was kind of a cool reveal, and I think WandaVision's a show that kind of limped through the finish line. I thought it started amazing, and then by the time it ended, I'm like, I still thought it was interesting, but it's just because of that dumb theme song that they gave her on WandaVision that is the name of this show, the Agatha All Along theme song. It's the only reason they gave her a show is because people loved that song. And I'm like, that's not enough of a reason to give her.
Andy, I only wanted to bring up, just Christian may not know this, that the first time I ever went on WATP was Andy and I together, and we were doing Marvel like versus DC. And that, God, I don't know how long ago that was. Andy, do you even know? But the first time I ever we went on because Andy and I grew up collecting Marvel comics and things like that. Sure. So I got a lot of opinions about at least the path that Disney's taken with it. Andy, where do you want to start with?
Well, I can, by the way, for the bona fides for people just listening, I can see behind Andy. I know that you're proudly displaying Amazing Spider-Man 300 with the cover by Todd McFarlane, because I know what that looks like from 3,000 miles away. Mm-hmm. And you have it graded. If I knew we were doing that, I would have held up my triple signed CGC slabbed Secret Wars #8 with the first appearance of the Black costume. I didn't know we were showing our slabs on this show.
I owned that at one point.
But like street cred wise, though, I respect that. But I do want to say, like, I've seen like nerd culture people like, oh, I've got 5 of these and they're all graded, whatever. I would only say that Andy and I did get that like street level
off the rack
release, like off the rack. That is the original one that we bought at the time of that happening. So I respect everybody.
You don't have it anymore, though.
And whatever they do and minting and whatever. But all those boxes behind Andy were all essentially got at time of release. Well, most of them. Some of them.
All I'll say is that when I sent my Secret Wars #8 to be graded and triple signed, I didn't even have it bagged and boarded. It was just in a stack of books, and it was the 75 cents that I spent for it in whatever 1984, 1985. Nice.
Yeah.
So
it came back graded what?
8 something. Because I had it pressed. Yeah, so you can pay a little bit to have them. Yeah.
I think those were pressed too, or at least. But
anyway, way too geeky.
This is definitely not why people see. This is what happens. You tell me that I'm going to come on and talk about Marvel. This is what happens.
Hey, nobody ever talks about this though. Like, you can go get that, but did you get it in real time? Did you get it way back when? Nobody talks about that. You might have it. Cool. That's great. You bought it. Awesome. But.
I mean, how is that? Well, what difference does that make, though? Whether
it just we're really
boots on the ground, Andy.
Right? Yeah. Because I went and saw John Carpenter's Halloween. I got to see an original 35mm print of that.
It looked like shit,
and it looked terrible. But when that projector clicked on and you get that gives you a sensory feeling that takes you back in time to seeing movies that way. So I guess there is something to what you're saying.
And look, to open an old comic book that I bought way back when, and by the way, a lot of like these what they call key issues I have because I subscribed to Amazing Spider-Man and Uncanny X-Men, and they all showed up in my house. But that smell of like the old newsprint. And the comic books now are all like glossy pages, but the old ones have that nice smell, and it is sort of like what you're saying about the movie projector. It's like, oh, they printed it on the most absolute garbage paper, but I love the way it looks instead of like, oh, if you digitally buy Amazing Spider-Man 300 and look at it on your computer, it's like, well, that's not as fun.
Right. Because I was reading some of the newer incarnations of Batman, like the Death of the Family series that Capullo art and I can't remember the writer's name. Anyway, I was really enjoying it, but I was just reading it on my iPad, and I was like, this is not satisfying. But I guess our point here is that we hold these properties precious to us, and when you start injecting this revisionist history horse shit, or suddenly Thor is a woman, suddenly She-Hulk is She-Hulk explaining to Bruce Banner how to be a better Incredible Hulk. It's just, who is that for? And this episode is about the problem with the MCU right now. And I want to kick off maybe one of the most recent problems. This is not necessarily Marvel's fault, but it certainly doesn't help the MCU when the new Thanos starts beating his girlfriend off screen. Kang the Conqueror is conquering his girlfriend because she caught him cheating, and he is booted from the what are we in, stage 5? Is this stage
I believe
5?
I believe it was phase 5
Phase
that they
5.
were building towards, with Kang the Conqueror, who is a well-known character if you're a huge nerd and you read a lot of comics with him. This was going to be his big moment. A lot of all this multiverse stuff was building towards that, a lot of time travel, the Loki series. And Jonathan Majors was in that, playing
Ant-Man
a version of him.
Ant-Man 3.
He playing a version of Kang, someone named Victor Timely from like the 19th century. So yeah, everything was in place for this guy. And then, he is in Creed 3, and I guess he took his work home with him, and he practiced on whoever was home. And that's the unfortunate part.
So if you're only, go ahead, Joe, you have something to add?
Well, I only wanted to qualify this, or at least set it up, like, only because this conversation, like, we could go on, I'm sure, for hours and hours and hours. And obviously, because this is all apologies, we're focusing on the apologies and maybe the transgressions and things like that. And since you brought that up, like, I will say, like, it's really hard when, like, the people that you like become scumbags. I really did like Jonathan Majors, like, as an actor in certain things, and this whole, like, he was on this meteoric rise. For him to like land this role as Kang was like huge. Like, they were crafting the whole universe around him, and we're gonna kind of jump around, like, some shit's before that, some shit is like during that or whatever. But I just felt the need to say, at least to the audience, because it's all apologies, we're going to cover all the apologies. We could go on and on about how Disney is, like, fucked this up for Marvel, like, from the very beginning. But
this is more
but anyway, I'll throw it back to you to cover Jonathan Majors more.
Right. I remember him from Lovecraft Country, and he was very you could see the star power on when he was a nobody on that. And
when they fall, did you see that movie, the cowboy one?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And
I loved it.
So when they cast him as Kang, everybody probably agreed that it was a good idea. And then this all came out, and he's dropped from it. It just to round up, if you're unclear about who Jonathan Majors is, like maybe you're listening internationally or something like that, he was in those properties we mentioned, but he got booted because let's see, I just copied some of the text from this. It said Jonathan Majors has been sentenced to probation after he was found guilty of assaulting his girlfriend. British choreographer, I'll just leave her name out, but the U.S. actor, dropped by Marvel, must now complete 52 weeks of domestic violence intervention. He avoided up to a year in jail after being convicted of third-degree assault. And let's see.
Allegedly.
Prosecutors say that he took his phone. His girlfriend snatched his phone away from him when another woman was texting him about how she wished that she could be kissing him right now. And his girlfriend that was sitting right next to him had a problem with that, took his phone. He grabs her by the wrist and twists her arm up behind her and fractures her finger and bruises her hand. And she had a cut behind her ear. So there's evidence of, physical abuse, and she's claiming emotional abuse. But there were text, Joe, just real quick, I'm just going to finish. Him texting her, maybe, this is when abusers beat their partners, they'll send, apology messages begging for forgiveness and things. And he said, I'm a monster, a horrible man, not capable of love. And he does the Dalia thing where he says he's going to kill himself if she doesn't take him back. And he compares himself to Martin Luther King and Obama, saying that she needs to support him like Coretta Scott King and Michelle Obama because he's trying to do great things. So these are like the emotional abuse, controlling things that he was accused of, and why Marvel is like, well, I don't think we need to attach this person to our brand. And we're going to throw basically all of phase 5 in the toilet because of this.
Yeah, and first of all, I mean, so this guy never learned how to shut off his notifications, his text notifications, especially if you're sitting with your lady. And
you're supposed to be a supervillain. You don't even know how to get a fucking burner phone, Jonathan.
Well, do you have the actual apology? Like I sent you that screenshot or whatever from him.
No,
I have it right here.
It's interesting while you find that it's also, he's reminding me of Kanye trying to, you don't have the answers, Sway. You don't know, just like this is really where he's at, is trying to say like, no, I need someone who supports me. And look, there might be some ways in which he is accurately comparing himself to Martin Luther King, allegedly, depending on what you read from history. But I think he might be reaching a little by saying that, I'm a great man. Like,
yeah, that seems high, high status.
And I don't even know if Obama likes girls. I don't know for sure. So I don't even know if that's fair. Like I said, I just don't know.
Yeah. Wrap it up, Joe. What was his?
So from Reuters, the quote ended up being. Majors told ABC, "I'm sorry, I was reckless with her heart, not with her body." And I'll only bring it up because we just covered Jeremy Clarkson, and we covered Jeremy Clarkson punching Piers Morgan repeatedly. That Jeremy Clarkson broke his pinky on Piers Morgan punching him. So when you say that Jonathan Majors' girlfriend's pinky is broken, I think a defense attorney would be like, were you punching him a lot? I don't know.
We're going to keep it like
that I'm what's known on the street as a victim blamer, but that's not true. I mean, I think they made the right choice here with it. It's very controversial. I'm not defending that guy.
Although what I will say is that I feel like in the UK, you can't even be brought up on charges if you hurt your hand punching Piers Morgan. It just meant that you're part of the majority. If I had
yeah, new girl.
So my question to Christian then is, do you know what's the scoop on phase 5 and the Kang dynasty?
Well, I think that they would have removed Jonathan Majors, and he wasn't the quote unquote lucky break for Marvel is that he wasn't actually found guilty of anything until after season 2 of Loki had aired. Because they could have been in a conundrum where he's in all these scenes and then they would have had to figure out what to do. And I think that if they were on a continued streak, a great track record of all the movies after Endgame had been doing well, I believe that they would have just recast the character of Kang. It's very easy. At the end of Ant-Man Quantumania, you see all these versions of him. There's all these people, and yes, they're all Jonathan Majors, but then it's a very comic book thing. It's like, well, now they look like this. I mean,
or you just throw the mask on him, right? Like,
right. Well, you could put the mask on, but
is your answer?
But Rhodey didn't always look like Don Cheadle, did he? And then just one day he was Don Cheadle.
Right. Exactly.
So is the answer that they're just letting it blow over and Majors is still going to be?
Because they decided to retool and go bigger. And inexplicably, I know actually it makes perfect sense. They're bringing Robert Downey Jr. in as Dr. Doom, and Dr. Doom is a bigger, badder guy who evolved over time to having, some various ties like time travel and being able to do things, on a bigger scale than just being a guy who would lose in a fist fight to Spider-Man the way I remember him. So yeah. And the reason they're bringing Robert Downey Jr. in is because of the financial disappointment, and it's like, great, we'll just have RDJ. And I've talked about this on the show that we do, Marvel Movie Talk, that after it was announced at Comic-Con, there's no one who doesn't think that he'll be great in the role. Of course he'll be great in the role, but you didn't need him. You just get another great actor.
Yeah,
you don't have to use him again.
Lazy. It's so lazy.
It's not inspired casting. It's like the most obvious
dependable dependability.
So I guess the answer is the Kang Dynasty plot thread is done. They're abandoning that for a Doctor Doom plot thread.
The Doom is the replacement now.
My clips will kind of touch on this, so we can.
I like that better, honestly.
Let's move forward because we're definitely going to come back to this topic with my clip. So, if you, what else do you got, Andy?
Okay, well, another touchstone moment that I feel drove the MCU in the direction that it finds itself in now is the fact that they had the Russo brothers. These are the right properties are in the right hands when it was in the hands of these guys. And at one point I felt like it was in the right hands of the right person when Joss Whedon was running the Avengers movies. This guy knows how to write to this stuff, write female character, like strong female characters, based on his involvement with Buffy and all these other things they did. And then come to find out that in 2022, where is it? Here it is. In 2020 and 2021, Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg in Justice League, starts getting very vocal on Twitter about his treatment by Joss Whedon on Justice League when they were looking at the Avengers and they were saying, this guy's doing everything right with Marvel. Let's get him to come in and fix DC because Marvel was crushing DC. DC couldn't do a fucking thing right except maybe like Wonder Woman, and they're floundering and they're just like at a loss for how to fix their comic book universe. So they bring in Joss Whedon, and suddenly he's vilified by Ray Fisher. Let's look at clip one.
One second, Ant, just to fill that out a little bit more. Zack Snyder stepped away and they needed somebody to come in.
Yes.
He committed suicide.
Yes.
Yeah. So he stepped in as a fixer. Just to be clear on what happened. They weren't like, we got to bring this guy in. Like they were desperate to find somebody.
Okay. Well, let's just punctuate this with my clip one, Ed.
Interesting. There's this cast of the Justice League. Hey, only the not famous guy seems to have a problem with.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It's probably worth pointing out that it is the black guy who has a problem.
In December, Warner Media concluded its investigation into Whedon's alleged misconduct, stemming from Ray's allegations about Joss's behavior on the set of Justice League. The 33-year-old actor claimed the director was, quote, abusive and unprofessional. The corporation said in a statement at the time, quote, remedial action has been taken, adding there are still conversations that need to be had and resolutions that need to be found.
Now, we had a little technical hiccup, but Christian, you were right. You said that looks good, but suddenly the guy that's the least famous has the biggest problem with the director.
Yeah, right. Exactly. He's the one that's a problem. And look, I mean, if there is a history of anything racial with Joss Whedon, which I don't know, I'm not alleging, I'm just saying if there is, then, that would have standing. I do. My understanding is that women don't have as much to say kind about working with Joss Whedon. And also, like, that movie was never going to be good, but the Whedon cut was absolute garbage. The things that he went in to do to Justice League, adding jokes that weren't funny, creating situations that didn't improve that movie in any way. Now, look, Zack Snyder's Justice League, the 4-hour cut that he did for HBO Max, that is, just a big, bloated, self-indulgent mess. But it's so much more entertaining than the theatrical cut of Justice League. And I know that, people want to hear about the apologies part of all this, but the fundamental problem with Justice League is that they did it like 3 movies too early. Why did you care about the Avengers? One, it was a good movie, but you already had Captain America in a movie, you had Thor in a movie. Yes, Black Widow hadn't had her own movie, but she was a big part of Iron Man 2. And look, of course, Hawkeye didn't have his own movie because he's Hawkeye. We'd had 2 Iron Men at that point. We'd had 2 different actors play Hulk at that point, and this was the 3rd actor. So we cared about the characters. Who cared about Cyborg before that movie.
Yeah.
No one really. And we didn't get to know Flash until that movie. You know, it was like the Flash movie, for what it was, should have come before Justice League, because
speaking of somebody who's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, to your point, though, I'll say two things. I fell asleep during the original Justice League, like literally. They have the recliners. I reclined the fucking thing and passed out. I watched the bloated Snyder Cut one, and truth be told, the Cyborg character was much more fleshed out and a much more entertaining story in that cut. Like, can you fit everything in that movie? Obviously, he's more of a side character or whatever, but that cut of that does flesh that character out, and he becomes a much more enjoyable character in that, if you have the time to watch it. So that is true, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know, that character suffered greatly and almost like detracts from the story.
I'm only going to step in here now because you're talking, episode is about what's wrong with Marvel, and we're getting a little too much into DC, but in the same breath, I'm going to say that and it's also all apologies, and this is a scandal about Joss Whedon and all that. You can't talk about Joss Whedon and people that hate him without talking about Buffy. So at this point, when we're going to zero in on the problem with Joss Whedon and how his seemingly capable hands were molding the MCU in the right direction, and it was now snatched away from him because of DC, that seems nefarious. Secret word.
That had to be after the fact, right?
No, after what fact?
Well, that he was tremendously successful.
After he was away from the MCU, you mean?
Yeah, he wasn't doing Civil War is a Captain America movie, not an Avengers movie. Possibly because they wanted to keep Whedon away from it. Let's remember that Avengers was a great movie. Not everyone will tell you that Avengers Age of Ultron is a great movie. I would not tell you Avengers Age of Ultron is a great movie. I think there's things that work in it, but there's definitely things that don't, and not just Elizabeth Olsen's accent. But that's a big problem with that movie.
Before we just move on, I just want to, like, cherry on top before you go back to that, where the guy ejects out of the plane and Hulk grabs the ejection seat. I leapt out of my seat cheering, like, just to give Joss Whedon his credit. That part is just outstanding.
There are parts of that movie that work very well
in that movie.
Agreed.
Perfect. Well, a lot of people do like Joss Whedon, Buffy's a beloved property, and to hear that he was a tyrant is hard for that fandom. And in my clip 2, this is Charisma Carpenter, who played Cordelia on that. When Ray Fisher comes out and says how Joss treated him on Justice League, she immediately jumps into the fray on Twitter and starts going to bat for Ray Fisher. And then this just sets off a shitstorm of everybody else piling on Whedon, but let's sum that up here in clip.
So before you get to the clip, so all the people that were number 5 on the call sheet, all the people who are not the famous ones
that were
don't like him. Charisma Carpenter. Okay, let's hear this.
For nearly 2 decades, I have held my tongue and made excuses for certain events that traumatized me to this day. Joss Whedon abused his power on numerous occasions while working together on the sets of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. The disturbing incidents triggered a chronic physical condition from which I still suffer. It is with a beating, heavy heart that I say I coped in isolation and, at times, destructively. Carpenter detailed several disturbing incidents with Whedon, many of which were centered around...
He doesn't look like a pedophile at all.
Several examples. Joss has a history
awkward because I was about to say he looks like Patrick Melton.
He's created hostile and toxic work environments on set since his early career. I know because I experienced it firsthand, repeatedly. Examples Carpenter alleged included frequent threats to fire her and mocking her body weight, including calling her fat when she was 4 months pregnant and weighed 126 pounds. She also accused him of fostering a generally hostile work environment, saying he was mean and biting, disparaging about others openly, and often played favorites, pitting people against one another to compete and vie for his attention and approval. Carpenter also claimed that Whedon bullied her about her religious beliefs and her pregnancy, forced her to work late and extensive hours late into her pregnancy, and fired her from the series after she gave birth. She concluded, It is abundantly evident that Joss has persisted in his harmful actions, continuing to create wreckage in his wake. My hope now, by finally coming forward about these experiences, is to create space for the healing of others who I know have experienced similar serialized abuses of power.
Right. So she got pregnant. He made a joke that 126-pound smoke show Charisma Carpenter looked fat when she was 4 months pregnant, and he was upset that you ruined his show by getting pregnant. She made her problems his problems, and he didn't like that.
Says the guy who willingly decided to do a musical episode. This guy's talking about, and I know people love that, and I don't understand it. So no series was ever made better by its musical episode. I don't care what anyone says about that, and I'll stand by that.
What about a Joker sequel? Is that made better by making it a musical?
Well, yeah, just because of the romance of what the guards do to him in the bathroom after he comes back from trial. Yeah. That's the part that needs to be a
prison guard romance.
Yeah,
okay. I may have to see this movie.
The Tool song "Prison Sex" kicks in.
It may or may not. Yeah. So go ahead, Andy. I mean,
well, I was gonna move on to some other allegations.
No. I just want to set the timeline up a little bit more, and maybe just have Christian confirm this because he's kind of our in-house expert today. That pre-Disney, Marvel Cinematic Universe, like they were making movies.
When did the
first
MCU
Avengers
definitely
is? Yeah, first Avengers is definitely pre-Disney. Yeah,
right. So this will
that's why Disney bought it. Yeah,
right. The success of the Avengers, the way like that they serialized.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to correct myself because I just looked it up. Disney purchased Marvel in 2009, and Avengers is 2011. So actually, yes, the Avengers movie would have been in the works in 2009, but it hadn't come out. It hadn't been a success. So
the work that went in to crafting that whole journey was pre-Disney. Disney saw how successful that was and said, we want to be in the Marvel business. Let us do that. And that's where a naive Joe Sixpack goes, this is going to be awesome because Disney's going to put all this money behind new awesome things, and they're going to be able to do so much more. Anyway, back to you, Andy.
Great. I wanted to just run down a few of, I mean, when we're talking, we know that woke culture is the real problem with the MCU right now. I feel like
my friend Daniel Alexander, who has a mobile coffee shop, would disagree. But Andy, I'll listen to your point.
I'll let him know. And when I see him down here.
Yes, but it's the people that were culpable out of the Me Too movement, and everybody that they discovered was a genuine scumbag. The problem with Marvel, in my opinion, is the overcorrection to get away from that. But when you look at all of these things that I'm now going to lay out about Joss Whedon, it becomes really hard to say, well, no, let's not get carried away from this overcorrection, because look what this fucking guy, what people are saying about this guy. One of them being that Summer Glau, who was on Firefly, was saying that it's just that he writes all of his female characters who are heroes to be born. I don't agree with this either, but they're like, well, all of his characters are born out of female characters are born out of trauma, and that's a problem. And I say, what hero isn't?
You got to look at any Disney.
Everything. Joe, Spider-Man, Batman, Captain America, Black Panther, any Disney princess, Bambi, the old man from Up, Jigsaw, Donald Trump, the Bigfoot and Harry and the Hendersons. It's everybody. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about with that statement, but I don't like, this was on the list of things that Joss Whedon has done wrong, and you're way off with that.
Yeah,
Variety or whoever wrote this.
Let me tell you a quick story that stabs me in my heart. I have 2 small children, and they constantly, like, they start playing fantasy games, and they're like, okay, our parents are dead. And I'm like, no, why are you always trying to kill me in all of your fucking play scenario? But anyway,
because of Disney.
Because the good stuff in the Disney movie always happens after the parents are dead.
Right.
Yeah. The fun part isn't the part with the parents. Yeah.
Well, another big people
you can't have agency if you have parents.
Yeah. Right. But people are also looking at Whedon with the side eye when he creates the show Dollhouse, where all these women are just you flip a switch and they're forced to have sex with all whoever you want them to. And everybody's like, well, maybe that's not the best theme for your show, Joss. So, did anybody have a problem with that?
I thought it was the best theme, but anyway.
I found it to be a bucket list item to be able to visit the Dollhouse and find someone from there.
Yeah,
could Disney name it the Bunny Ranch in Las Vegas?
Anyway. Yeah, Disney needs to create a Dollhouse world at their new park. Yeah. And okay, I mean, I had a bunch of clips of a lot of the people involved with Buffy saying one way or another like that he was a problem, but I did find this one, Deadpool's girlfriend, Marina Baccarin. How do you say that?
I believe that's how you say it, Baccarin.
All right. Yeah, Ed, can we jump to clip 6? And maybe not everybody felt the way that Charisma Carpenter did.
Would you ever do anything again with the whole Firefly Serenity world?
Yeah, I like laying some things to rest. I love those people with all of my heart.
But what was your experience with Joss Whedon?
It was fine, actually. I have no horrible stories or feelings towards him. You know, he could be a little egotistical and
But you never saw what the other people see. You just weren't privy to that.
I didn't, which does not, let me just be very clear, invalidate anything or I'm not saying anybody's making anything up. That was not my experience. I mean, I've certainly experienced sexism and weird situations at work, like most women have, but I don't leave a lot of room for that, if that makes sense. I'm kind of a straight shooter. You know this about me. So if somebody is going to say something or do something, I think I would deal with it immediately.
I don't know who that interviewer is, but he's like,
what's his name?
That's Michael Rosenbaum, who played Lex Luthor.
Oh, I didn't recognize him.
Yeah, so that's his podcast, Inside of You, which is maybe not the best title for a podcast when you're talking about sexual indiscretion.
Again, Marina Baccarin, more famous than Summer Glau. What does Sarah Michelle Gellar have to say? Has she ever spoken about this? I mean, that's the most famous person who basically he built up her career, you know?
Well, since you asked, let's see clip 3.
Hang on, before Michael Rosenbaum.
Don't. What are you doing?
Can I have a comment on the clip we just watched before you go to the next? Michael Rosenbaum, also classically a little too close to the Nixium sex cult with Allison Mack and things like that. So his perspective on this scenario may be slightly skewed. I don't know if he has the radar to pick up on these abuses.
Okay, maybe you're right about that. Let's find out from Sarah Michelle Gellar what her thoughts on Joss Whedon.
While I am proud to have my name associated with Buffy Summers, I don't want to be forever associated with the name Joss Whedon. I am more focused on raising my family and surviving a pandemic currently, so I will not be making any further statements at this time. But I stand with all survivors of abuse, and I'm proud of them for speaking out.
Right.
It's just like when Kenan Thompson didn't really want to say anything about his experience on all that. It's like I've benefited the most from this, so I don't think I'm really going to say much about Dan
The only
Snyder.
way I've been able to be on Saturday Night Live for 22 years is because of the fact that I was on all that beforehand. No complaints, and that seems to be what Sarah Michelle Gellar is doing. And look, Marina Baccarin did the same thing. It's like, I'm not trying to take away what anybody else said. I'm proud of this. I probably don't want to be associated with that guy, but it didn't seem like, she's not saying like I had a terrible time,
Shout out Drake Bell's bunghole.
I like how Sarah Michelle Gellar is just like, I'm dealing with the whole pandemic here right now, you know. And
the best would be if that statement was from 2024, like earlier this year. She's like, I'm still dealing with the pandemic, guys. Come on,
I have long COVID.
Yeah, I'm dealing with this whole Diddy party thing right now. I can't weigh in on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, since we heard that, the last one, and then I'm going to turn it over to Joe. The way that Marino was just like, that wasn't everybody's experience. And people start looking at Michelle Trachtenberg, who was Buffy's little sister, and she was 14
Andy's
when
favorite.
I got a thing for her.
But you like her in the Eurotrip movie, not
yes, that's
Buffy,
really
so that's fine. That's
it was Ice Princess. The Disney
It's trying to help you, Andy.
Fucking Gossip Girl, for God's sake. She's a smoke show. But when she was on that show at the age of 14, something happened. Maybe a 14-year-old couldn't even that day, and a showrunner had to put them in their place. And then suddenly her team is saying, well, we don't really want Joss to be alone with Michelle because he dressed her down about her work ethic. I'm not saying this is what happened, but what didn't happen was she didn't say he was inappropriate with me in a romantic way. That was not the allegation. So I'm just saying I have a lot of problems with these people that start saying that somebody who's in charge laid down the law for people that maybe weren't the most reliable on the job site. Right. So the only problem with Michelle Trachtenberg coming out and trying to say that Joss Whedon deserves all of the heat that he's taking this is the way that she wrote it. I'm going to read it the way that she wrote it and tell me if this lends any credibility to the allegations against Joss Whedon, because she wrote, because, period, this must, period, be known, period, as a teenager, period, with his not appropriate behavior, ... very, period, not period, appropriate period, the last period. Comment I will make on this period was period. There was a rule period saying period. He's not allowed in a room alone with Michelle again, period. That's what she wrote on Twitter.
Wow. She on her period.
I'm really uncomfortable. I'm really uncomfortable with Andy talking so much about Michelle Trachtenberg's period when she was 14. I might need to leave early today, guys.
You guys were racing to that one. Okay, so I think what it all comes down to is that Joss Whedon turned out to be a problem, and I don't. They took away the Batgirl movie I was really looking forward to. Wasn't he somehow involved with that, and that got thrown in the toilet?
Maybe. Well, the Batgirl movie was a write down for insurance reasons, and they made it. And Michael Keaton plays an older Batman in it, right. And they still decided to write it down because that didn't save Flash. I guess they're like, oh wait, so the old Batman thing isn't going to help. So yeah.
Well, that was what. So Christian, we did Star Wars Disney before we did this Marvel Disney's type of thing, and that's like what
Disney has only made Star Wars better. I can't find anything that they could have possibly done that made it less enjoyable.
But only you said the tax thing,
just one more digression before I turn it over to Joe. Has anybody, now that the Simpsons are on Disney, did anybody see the Sideshow Bob? It's like 3 minutes short of, it's like a musical with Sideshow Bob, and it throws all of the shit at the wall with all like Marvel, and just go watch it and be embarrassed for Disney. So like, what the fuck are you doing? How many things can you fucking ruin all at the same time in 3 minutes on the Simpsons, between Star Wars and Marvel and the Simpsons? Fuck you, Disney.
Well, listen, I hear you saying that, and just wait until Disney buys the NFL. You thought it was bad now? Just wait.
What did they just buy? Oh, Super Mario, right? Didn't they just buy Mario?
Nintendo? What the fuck is happening?
I don't know. There's a huge, amazingly well done Nintendo World at Universal Studios Hollywood. Just
maybe
up the
I'm
hill
wrong.
from me. So, they do continue to acquire intellectual property. I agree with you on that, Joe. I just don't know. I don't think it was Mario.
So I only want to wrap this up in the context of our show. To Andy's point with Joss Whedon, is like everybody loves to point at somebody in power who they think should be responsible. Ellen DeGeneres was one where they're just like, she's not just constantly happy. Can you imagine that she was maybe upset one day? She's a monster. Paula Deen, I mean, she's got her own problems, but everybody loves to point at somebody in power and be like, they're horrible people. But Ellen DeGeneres kind of being the prime example of that, and Joss Whedon may be another example of that as well.
You're saying Paula Deen was maybe not in the wrong?
Crazy ass cracker.
What I'm saying is everybody's got a problem with who's on top. And so we already talked about, let's run through these real quick. So what I did was go to Rotten Tomatoes to pull up all kind of the current or recent Disney Marvel properties. Let's start. We talked about Agatha All Along, I think, early on. Ed, if you could throw that up. So what I can't stand is this has to be a lie. There is absolutely no possible fucking way that 82% of critics and 81% of viewers love this show. I don't buy it. I just simply do not buy it.
Maybe I will always buy the critics. You know what I mean? The critics, sure, that could actually be right. But the 81% fan, the popcorn meter. And by the way, this is why I always say, don't base your decisions on something, don't base your decisions on whether or not you're going to go to a movie on something called the tomato meter. Just decide if you feel like you're going to like it, and don't blame the tomato meter. But yeah, I have to agree with Joe. That doesn't feel accurate.
The 4 out of 5 people that are watching that show liked it. Nobody's watching that. So who the fuck is like, I can't wait for Agatha episode 3. I didn't get through 2. I didn't get through 1. I did watch one episode and I was like, this isn't for me. I'm not watching this.
I've watched all 5 of them because of the fact that I do a show where we talk about it.
You have to. Yeah,
because you have to.
You're following critics.
Each week I feel like I enjoy it a little bit less. There's a lot of singing on that show, and I did not love singing. I talked about musical episodes.
To what end? Why is that even in there? Who is this for?
Yeah. Hang on, Andy, though. But just because I don't know if you haven't watched it, but I did watch the first one, Christian. And my biggest problem was like at one point she leaves the house naked and talks to her neighbor.
Yep.
And his line is like, well, you're naked. And it's like my criticism of this show at this point, or Disney in general, is like they don't even have the creativity or access to language to make a joke. His joke in that scenario is just what's actually happening. Like if you're not a woman of color or something in this show, you're reduced to just stating a fact on screen. There's just no creativity left in the writing of it.
Right. He could basically, I know the scene you're talking about. I think that, so that character basically could have been like, well, Agatha, I'm out here trimming my hedges, and clearly you should have been doing the same. Right. You could have had some fun with it.
Right. You could have done anything, and you just like left to simply state what's in front. Well, yep, there's 3 people on this show today, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Okay. So I will only say, I think it's because it could be something more nefarious than what I'm saying, but I think the shows don't allow you to comment, but the movies do. So I could not find any comments about Agatha, and I could not find any comments about Miss Marvel, the last bomb of a piece of shit that they put out. Here's Miss Marvel, 98% fresh. Critic rating, 98% fresh, and 80% of fans loved Miss Marvel. Are you fucking kidding me?
There's 2 reasons for this. I'm going to have to say that I love that show. The casting of Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan was great, and people love this character. You have to take into consideration this version of Ms. Marvel from the comic books. I had no idea until this series just how much people loved this character. She has a good supporting cast, her family and her friends. She is much better in this series than she is in the movie that they put her into. So 98% is shocking. 80% of fans, I mean, if you're going to have to accept 80% of fans like Agatha, that doesn't shock me for this. Yeah. I don't know if you watched the whole thing, but I actually legitimately liked this show.
No, I did. You know where I did watch Joe real quick. I'll say I did watch that. I watched the whole thing. It was fresh in the sense that there's not really a show like that. It's kind of a street level version of, it's a not low stakes, but it's just a
let me put it into nerd terms. The old Marvel Netflix series where you had Daredevil, The Punisher, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and to some extent Iron Fist, they were on the smaller scale. And you're right. She lives in Jersey City. So she's, already there's the lowest of the low. She's not just in New Jersey. She's in Jersey City,
Yeah, I know. And I feel like there is a place for that character, and it's maybe not on my queue for something that I would watch season 2 of. But I can see how some people would like that.
A friend of mine that I do the Marvel shows with, he watched 1 or 2, and he's like, "Oh, it's like me with Agatha. This is a show that's just not for me." Freeform had a Cloak and Dagger TV series, and I hated the music on that show so much, but I kept watching it because I do shows like this. And my friend Zia, who I used to co-host that show with, people know her from the Chip Chipperson podcast, R.I.P. Chip, and she was just like, I hate this show so much because it's not for my audience. So that show definitely skews younger. But I guess if you're a fan of Michelle Trachtenberg's earlier work, maybe you like that show.
Go ahead, Joe.
I don't have a problem with being like, this show's just not for me. And that's fine. I don't love that character. I feel like the stretchiness is just a ripoff of Mr. Fantastic, which I don't appreciate at all. Like, it seems just like a hodgepodge of unoriginality creating a character like that. The Kamala Khan thing or whatever. I can accept the younger audience likes that. I checked out of that show when her mom starts fighting in the living room or something like that. I'm like, can we just make that character cool? Why does it have to be her whole fucking like Muslim, like domineering parents, like get involved or whatever? I don't know. I just didn't like it. It's not for me. That's fine. Yeah, but I do have a problem with, I don't believe those ratings. I don't believe those fucking ratings at all. That's where
98% is shocking. I agree.
That's shocking.
I agree.
Let's go to the next one, which we all know is dog shit. 79% on She-Hulk, 32% shit. Now,
I like you have to embrace the popcorn meter at 32% there, Joe. You have to be like, you know what? Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, this was very disappointing for me. The Hulk is one of my favorite all-time comics. I have a bunch in the boxes over here. To watch her dress down Bruce Banner in the early couple of episodes was infuriating to me. I like this actress. I thought there were a lot of things that this show just had potential, and it was just mishandled. I really liked seeing Matt Murdock come back, and that was mishandled. Just so many things about it. When it had the potential to be cool and different, just the way that they made it different was bad.
They were so close. Christian, let me get your take before I go off on this.
So I did not hate that show. It's definitely not my favorite. I like the She-Hulk character because they're taking sort of the page out of, there's a very specific era of She-Hulk in the early 90s. John Byrne did a self-aware She-Hulk. She knew she was in a comic book. Yep. So she's like Deadpool. She's very, breaking the fourth wall and all that. Yep. So I knew that was the approach for this. And I don't think they even nailed that approach the way they should have, but I think it was a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more fun. And if I'm going to compare it to something like Secret Invasion, I'm not even going to take time to complain about She-Hulk, but I do understand that it, again, wasn't for everyone. There were a number of choices that surprised me in there. You know, I'm not surprised that there's no plans to do another season. I know that was a very divisive one. I can see why most people who, like you're saying, Andy, like, well, I'm a fan of the Hulk, you know, the real Hulk, Bruce Banner, her cousin, and you know, that She-Hulk isn't necessarily for you. But I also don't know that it was so well done in the way as like, well, women like the She-Hulk show and men don't. It's not that cut and dried. I think most people that I talked to didn't like it, and I didn't love it. I do think that there's elements at work, but yes, we had Matt Murdock, we had Charlie Cox playing him, and then they give him like the stupidest looking Daredevil costume I've ever seen, which apparently he's not going to have in the Daredevil series that they're going to have. But yeah, no, they're but again, I also like Tatiana Maslany in general. I mean, she's an Orphan Black is what most people know her from. And yeah, I don't know that the show, I don't think the show, whatever it tried to set out to do, I don't know that it accomplished it.
I'll say what it did right for me.
Yeah,
this is what kept me around. Just real quick, you got the Hulk, the real Hulk. He's in it. You got the Daredevil. He's in it. The Abomination. Like, these are like comic crossover things. Everybody wants to see cameos in comics. So you want to see the heroes fight each other and then team up and fight a cool villain. So it was like on the right track, and then suddenly you're twerking with Megan Thee Stallion. Suddenly you're fighting an algorithm and and walking everything back. And it's just.
Andy, you referenced the sequence that worked the least for me, not just in that show, but maybe in anything Marvel ever. The twerking with Megan Thee Stallion, or is she the Stallion? I don't even know how you say it. I was just like, again, oh, this isn't for me, is it?
Right.
Okay, so listen, I don't even have I didn't even care about the Megan Thee Stallion thing, like her twerking. I actually thought that was kind of funny. So my biggest problem with this is that I feel like Disney didn't understand like kind of how critical this character could and should be in the overall universe, connected to the Fantastic Four, the fourth wall breaking, which just lends itself to Deadpool. If you're familiar with She-Hulk from the comics, now this is going back into the 90s before porn was everywhere. Like, comic books were like verging on porn, the nipples popping out of fucking bikini tops and shit like that. It was just embedded into 90s comics. Okay. And the thing about She-Hulk is that she was just the kind of character that could own it in a boss bitch way. And she could be that. She could have sex appeal. She could be a lawyer, and she could be a hero, and she could have all of these things. And like you said, like I follow a lot of these online things, and people love to shit on Tatiana Maslany as far as the way that she's been treated, or the way Disney has kind of like treated this property and sidelined it. They did many things wrong. The whole Kevin thing at the end was really poorly done. The way they treated male fans in the whole thing was very, very poorly done. And so I really liked a lot of parts of this show, and it just tripped over its dick at the end so egregiously that it really offended me as just a Marvel fan, because she should be a part of the Fantastic Four. It should be Spider-Man, She-Hulk, and Reed and Sue Richards as the original Fantastic Four is what I would have done with this against Doctor Doom. Okay,
that's like, cool. I mean, that's a good idea.
A lot of opportunities. What?
I was just gonna say, you're right that, because I mean, how many times can you make a poorly done Ben Grimm thing before you maybe bring in the She-Hulk as the heavy? That could be a cool way to approach it. And I am wondering if this is where people start to. Was this before or after Miss Marvel? Is this when people are just like, oh, the Emperor's not wearing any clothes?
This was after, wasn't it?
Yeah. This was after Miss Marvel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But people are like burning out on it at this point.
All right. I know we have maybe a slight time crunch. So we could go on and on about Rotten Tomatoes and audiences hating these properties. So let's just add just real quick, forget the comment section stuff. Let's go to Eternal 6. And see like that the Eternals is a terrible property.
Yeah, what the fuck was it? What was the plan with this?
Yeah, just
hey, I want Kumail Nanjiani to get an ungodly ripped shape for him to never take his shirt off in the entire movie.
Well, it was like because they saw Guardians of the Galaxy and they're like, we can take anything and make it successful if it's treated well. But what they forget is you need to write a good movie. There's way too much going on with this.
Nobody knows anything about this, and nobody cares.
Well, yeah, I mean, since I was like 7 years old, I've been reading Marvel comics for 40 plus years, and I knew who these characters were because I would see it, and I would they had like Walt Simonson did a 12-issue miniseries in like 1985, and I was like, no, I'm really not interested in that. I'm usually not interested in the characters, and I think that obviously you have to look at this movie and be like, wow, there's some tremendous casting in there, but part of the problem is that there's like 12 of them. There's just too much. If you were going to tell this story, you needed to do it as like a Disney Plus series and really take your time. And yes, it's too long as it is, but this needs to be longer. Spend some more time. These are people who have been around for thousands of years. Let's explore some of that. Let's do more. Let's not try and breeze through it and still end up with like, I don't know, runtime was 2 hours and 40 minutes or something. So that by the time you get the cameo, the guy from One Direction at the end of it, you're like, I don't even care anymore. I don't want more.
I don't even
remember that. No standalones for any of these characters to lead into this.
So again, this was one that I saw it and I was like, oh, I think that there are things that work in here. There's characters that are interesting, and then there are characters who are not. Like I was more interested that they introduced the Black Knight character, Dane Whitman. Like he's in it. And like they don't do anything with him because it's like, oh, well, it'll be in another movie. And there's like a post-credit scene where they tease Blade. Because that'll tie into him, and it's all the stuff that doesn't happen. It's a mess.
At the end of Eternals.
Yeah, he gets a phone call, and the voice is Mahershala Ali, who allegedly will one day be Blade if they ever make the movie.
Yeah, and, not the way
speaking of useless cameos, the Hercules at the end of Love and Thunder. It's like, what's ever going to happen with that? Nothing.
Well, Hercules at the you're right, with Roy Kent from Ted Lasso. Brett Goldstein. Yeah, you talk about something that we'll never see again. I know that, but so like this isn't a movie. Like there are properties and there are things that I will say I'm a bit of an apologist for when it comes to Marvel. This is one where I'm like, I didn't hate it, but man, they could have streamlined it, taken out a couple of characters, save them for another movie, maybe somewhere down the line. Just simplify it. This was too much. It was too complicated. It didn't really work. I didn't hate it, but I would never. There's no one on earth who it's like, oh, you want to get into MCU movies? Start with Eternals.
No.
I do want to hear Christian's worst of the worst, but I do. Joe, do you want to touch on anything further before Christian gets into the shittiest of the shit?
Well, not with the Eternals necessarily. I agree. Christian kind of nailed it. That's a universe that need to be like it was just too much, like a deluge of like information that nobody could even follow and nobody really cared or asked for. Like if you're going to do characters that nobody cares about, you need to make them interesting to an audience, and they really failed at that.
And I was gonna say, you guys said it. Guardians of the Galaxy. None of those characters, like Rocket Raccoon, was the only one I knew, and they combined them. They made it interesting. It worked. And I guess that's what they thought, but I mean, the Eternals never worked. They never had an ongoing monthly comic book. They showed up occasionally. Right. So
All right. Did you have something else before we keep going, or Andy?
No, I want you to.
What you said you wanted to.
No, I want you to finish up so that Christian can tell us what he hates the most about the MCU.
Oh, okay. Well, we're almost to the clips here. With Ant-Man at the next the 8 there. This is where things start. So this is where the motif, or at least what I'll be diving into, and maybe I'll explain this to Christian a little bit. At least what we see Kang in there. They try and make Ant-Man's daughter the new kind of hero in this movie. And one of the things that we see, particularly on social media, when it comes to all apologies or our podcast, an arc or a theme that we see is trying to like murder your heroes that you grew up with. And it seems like this kind of motif of like, we need to replace the old man with the new girl. And they try and do that. They're trying to do it with Ironheart. They're trying to do it with Hawkeye. They're trying to do it like in many facets. And this was like one of those where it's like, oh, it's going to be about Evangeline Lilly and Michelle Pfeiffer and Ant-Man's daughter. And we're going to introduce Kang into the story. And just so many, like, let's shit on what has worked forever and try and reinvigorate it for a completely different audience that does not give a shit.
Yeah. I think you're right. It was always my biggest complaint. It's called Ant-Man and the Wasp, and even in there, it's like, oh, Hope Van Dyne returns, and she's barely fucking in it. Do you guys like Ant-Man's daughter? Because she's the star of this now. Hey, Evangeline Lilly, I know that it was a big deal when you were the first woman Marvel character introduced. They made such a big deal about the Wasp being brought in, only to like stick her in the fucking third seat, not even the back seat, the fucking third seat behind Bill Murray and Michelle Pfeiffer. Evangeline Lilly is completely in the fucking luggage compartment of that vehicle.
Well, and then that movie in particular, Michael Douglas has never been, more underused and really unutilized in a movie. I'm excited for any movie that Bill Murray's in, except for Aloha. But other than that, it's always good to see him. And look, I think that whatever their plans were for Evangeline Lilly, and we'll talk about Shuri in the Black Panther.
Oh, right.
They were both denier. Well, here's the thing. They were both very vocal anti-vaxxers. So all of a sudden, and I don't care about anybody's opinion on that, but if you're Disney, you're like, we can't have anything to do with them. So our new Black Panther and our other Ant-Man, we will probably never see them again.
Oh yeah. If Chadwick Boseman hadn't died, that never would have happened. That woman would have been completely written out of that property.
Yeah, but and I think that in a lot of ways, the third Ant-Man, it's like fun at times. It is silly. But I think that it didn't work as well as the previous ones. I just had to chalk it up to like, oh, I had fun with much of that movie, but you're just like, you can feel them losing the thread. And it's mostly like, oh, they're building up Kang. That's what this is all about. It's all heading towards Kang.
Unfortunately, the dopest part of that movie was Jonathan Majors, who they were just like, oh,
he's great.
You're fun too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's probably what the problem is. And, that is the beginning of last year, right? Beginning of 2023, that comes out. And that starts a trend of, some real problems for Marvel. 2023 was not a great year. They were smart. They punted a lot of stuff out of 2024. The only thing that we got theatrically was Deadpool and Wolverine, and it was a tremendous success. And people, for the most part, really liked it, and it was great. It was fun, and that's what it should be. And I think we're gonna get a lot more of that feeling than what we had going into 2023. And you can break down some of the behind the scenes stuff in Disney that changed. You had this guy Bob Chapek in charge that ultimately Bob Iger comes back, and there's a lot of that at play with the future of the MCU because Kevin Feige does not have the blank check that he once had. And you can really go much further back for all of this. That I have a friend who decided he was going to tap out of Marvel movies after Avengers Endgame because it just ended so well. I don't want to see it. And there's something to be said for that. There's good stuff after that, but I don't know that it's been great since Avengers Endgame.
I'm going to skip over a lot of this, but only because we don't need to spend too much time. And I let this guy do the talking. I believe this Andy Signor is the host of Popcorned Planet. And what they did talk about, only because this is all apologies, was Kevin Feige apologizing for the whitewashing that occurred in Shang-Chi. So Shang-Chi was the first movie on the heels of
whitewash. What?
Tilda Swinton should have been an ancient Asian person.
No, that's the first Doctor Strange. Tilda Swinton was it's an old Asian character. Right. called The Ancient One, and then they replaced it with Tilda Swinton. And yeah, so that was like one opportunity they had to actually have an Asian character, and they're like, nah, let's have Tilda Swinton. But we did a gender reversal, so it should be fine. Yeah, that goes all the way back to the first Doctor Strange, though. Yeah,
that's old white man woke culture logic.
Yeah,
just I know it's not a Chinese guy, but it's a woman, so it's the same.
Yeah, and play that clip one here.
All very rich white men who are, I feel like, doing these gestures to attempt to keep their jobs. So they seem like they're not the enemy; they're the ally. And so, granted, they have to do it, but there's just it's always something annoying, rubs me the wrong way of when you see Kevin Feige of all people. Dude, why don't you give up your job then? Honestly, let's represent better. No.
Yeah. In the end, whoever complained about this is just being a baby. Like the fact that Tilda Swinton is actually an ancient alien, and by casting her, you avoid all concerns about race and gender because she's none of those things. My apologies to Tilda Swinton, but like it was like a good sidestep. Like she is just kind of like this odd looking person, and it's like she doesn't have to be Asian, she doesn't have to be a woman, she doesn't have to be a man, she doesn't really have to be
racist
anything.
In the comics to make her Asian. That was the racism. They corrected it.
I didn't hate her casting. I think it's very nitpicky to criticize that, especially in a movie that is chock full of Asian actors. Like it's just little silly. I mean, maybe in Doctor Strange, like when Christian pointed out that she was in that, maybe you call that whitewashing.
That's what they were
to bring her into Shang-Chi.
You're confused. She wasn't.
I don't know why they show Shang-Chi in that article. Yeah, because he's talking about Doctor Strange specifically. Yeah.
But she comes back in Shang-Chi, I believe, doesn't she?
Right. I actually don't remember her being in it, but she does show up in an Endgame when they start trying to get the Infinity Stones.
Right.
Yeah.
The Hulk fights her or something, right?
Yeah. It may only be because somebody like at the announcement of Shang-Chi was just like, oh, but remember the whitewashing that went on in this movie? Like even they might not even be related.
Right. Look, the whitewashing and gender switching is something that's relevant. The recent Marvel series, which ended up on Hulu, Echo, maybe that wasn't for everybody, but that was a character who in the comics was a Native American and she was deaf. And so that they got this actress who was not only Asian American and deaf, she also had some kind of prosthetic limb. So they really, that's always like, that's who the character is. So do that. They didn't take Black Panther and have Black Panther become a woman, Native American, with a disabled person in some way. So I think that those characters exist. And like, when you look to the X-Men and how diverse those characters are, that's great. And it's like, there's a very cynical reason for it. This is marketing, like these characters all across the world, look like everything. And then you can sell your comic books and now your movies. I don't have any problem with that part of it when you're using the characters. And sometimes the gender switches work. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you notice them. Sometimes you forget who the character is. It doesn't matter. It does seem to be a little bit of a calculated effort. One film that, before we go, I know we need to make sure to mention is The Marvels, because I know most people hated that movie. And what I can say about The Marvels is that I appreciated its hour 45-minute runtime. And it is the only MCU movie that I was able to take my then 8-year-old son and 5-year-old daughter. That's the one I could take them to, partially because of the runtime, partially because of the cats. And my daughter likes the Ms. Marvel character from an animated series she watches for preschoolers. So you can pull apart so many things in that movie, and you feel they did such extensive reshoots, and there's things that don't match up. There's a lot of problems with that movie, but at the same time, that's a movie that's a reminder of like, oh yeah, for the most part, this stuff should be for kids. And if it works on the right level, audiences of all ages, kids of all ages can enjoy it. So I don't hate that movie the way that a lot of people I know do. I even told people that like I was lucky enough to go to a press screening, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. I think everybody's gonna like it. And everybody I said that to was like, what the fuck were you talking about? That was garbage. I'm like, oh, sorry, I had fun with it. I like those characters.
Excuse me. I like doing things with my family.
Yeah, well, that's what it turned into. And
the cat thing I did love. And I only have three clips left here. And I just want to set up my concerns over the future for Marvel here. So now we get into Kevin Feige. Actually, we'll hear words from the man's mouth, and he's on a promotional tour for Deadpool and Wolverine that I think we've all seen at this point, you know, a critical success here. This one is about bringing Hugh Jackman back. And I just listen closely here. I'll point a couple things out.
I had said, you did it. Why rush back into something? And to his credit, he didn't. Years and years and years went by. And we started working on Deadpool with Ryan and with Sean. And a lot of great ideas came up and a ton of great scenes and storylines, which were in the final movie, but it was missing something. It was the reason for being other than people like Deadpool, let's make another Deadpool movie. It has to be more than that. Sure. And when Hugh called, that's when it worked. That's when it became. And by that point, we were in our multiverse saga. We had access to fun things like the Time Variance Authority, and we could do both. We could maintain the legacy of Logan in a respectful or somewhat respectful way, and bring Hugh in as another incarnation.
Okay, so the things that I picked up in this interview and the things that concern me are, it had to be more than that. Now, Ryan Reynolds passionately defending and making sure that Deadpool is good. Hugh Jackman coming back to a great project. Sean Levy, shepherding that whole project. Tremendous success. Kevin Feige only gets interested when, well, it had to be more than that. And how can I leverage this property within Marvel? Because Ryan Reynolds is manipulating Deadpool right now because he is Deadpool. So it had to be more than that. We can do both. We can bring Hugh in as another incarnation. These are the things that concern me, okay? Because what Kevin Feige is talking about here is how can I manipulate this character and property to benefit Marvel as a whole and twist it to my own liking.
Well, that's his
way
job.
I look at this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they're talking about two different things. We could talk about Deadpool and how that's awesome over here. Kevin Feige is talking about Marvel Disney as a whole. At least just keep that in mind. Christian?
Well, I think that I think that a Deadpool 3 that's just a Deadpool 3 is, probably like a $500 million movie. And as we found with the second Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, $500 million is a failure. So he needed $1 billion movie and then some. So I think that the subtext in there is 2023 had Guardians 3, which for the most part people liked and thought was reasonably well done. And even if you didn't, it was successful. So that's all that mattered. That was their one success. And they were like, we need more of that, less Quantum Mania, less Marvels, less Love and Thunder, So they were just like, let's focus on having our hits. And putting Wolverine in that movie does make all the difference. You could tell a story like that. You could borrow from a comic book series called Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, but having it be basically Lethal Weapon with Deadpool and Wolverine made that movie. So I think he's just talking big picture. If they had the string of hits that didn't exist over the last 4 years, if they'd had the string of hits, then Deadpool 3 probably would have been like, just put Deadpool in a movie. So I don't know.
I want to get your opinion on. Sorry, Andy, what?
I just want to say that when we're talking about the things that are wrong with Marvel, bringing up Deadpool and Wolverine is, saying Kevin Feige tried to insert when we talk about, I've brought up how in music, people will put superfluous things in, like the P. Diddy. It's like, we don't need you involved in this. It's your way of making sure that you have some kind of responsibility with it, and you get paid for that. That's what he's doing there.
Yeah.
But aside from that this is the best thing that's happened to Marvel in 10 years.
Yeah. I want to get to my last clip before we run out of time here. But this one puts a button on Jonathan Majors. Everybody put your finger in your collar and get ready to be upset. This is clip 2, interview 2, Ed. Put your finger in your collar and get ready to get awkward.
Was Kang Dynasty. Is Kang still a villain in an Avengers film?
Do you know, I've done a number of interviews in the last couple of days, and you're the first person to, I give you credit for just outright asking the question. And I'll give myself credit for trying to evade it and avoid it entirely.
Well, I give you credit for avoiding it.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Yeah. No, I get
Absolutely
it. Yeah,
nothing from him.
I'm surprised that no one else asked him. I feel like
Jonathan who?
What are you talking about?
And again, the replacing Kang with Doctor Doom is what they probably would not want to call a happy accident in a memo because of the reason that they had to say goodbye to Jonathan Majors. So there's nothing happy about it, but it gave them the opportunity to go bigger, just like Deadpool and Wolverine is bigger.
Dr. Doom's always been like one of my favorite villains. I'm so glad that they're using a Dr. Doom. I mean, they've never done it right in all the Fantastic Fours. It's always
I touched on it, but anyone who didn't see the Secret Invasion series on Disney Plus, it has a great cast. It has characters you know and some characters you love, and it's still unbelievably how terrible it is and what a bad misfire it is. What is a great story in the comic books, and they just don't do anything with it, and you feel like they cut a lot of corners and it's completely ignored. You have Nick Fury interacting with Skrulls in the Marvels movie. No reference about like, boy, I just had to stop an invasion from a bunch of Skrulls. It's nothing. They immediately just ignored it. So I feel like good times are ahead, but
here's my concern.
There are some instances where they may not be, but like Andy, I'm looking forward to the Thunderbolts.
Yeah, I am looking forward to that. But my larger concern comes in my last clip here. Clip 3 on the interview, Ed.
Have we met the anchor point of in X-Men 97?
No, but I love you are the third person to ask me about anchor beings and how that term, and when people, you guys have only seen
it's not a fucking thing,
the whole movie, how that term has taken hold in people's imaginations is exciting.
Yeah, no, the problem. Yeah. Oh, the TVA. We were able to get the TVA involved. We're introducing this anchor points. I guarantee you. Now, I said I don't like that they take Sam Raimi and they take Doctor Strange, people I like. You're going to take Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, and a character that I like, and set me up to be like, oh, look, Wolverine. Spoiler alert. Anybody who hasn't seen Deadpool and Wolverine yet, Wolverine is the anchor being in a universe. This is bullshit. Oh, the prime. What is it? The sacred timeline. The sacred timeline is what Kevin Feige determines that it is. The anchor beings are going to be whatever. I guarantee the next we'll never see an anchor being that isn't a diverse woman of color who's like a fucking genderqueer, nondescript, human-like life form that like just fits in some fucking mold. They've set me up with a brilliant movie to just fucking shit on it. That's what my prediction is.
America Chavez is going to be.
Thank you for your time, Christian.
Oh no, believe me. It's look, I think that that the post Endgame era is very difficult to navigate and enjoy. There are definitely highs and lows, and before we started way back then. We referenced the Black Widow movie, and the shocking thing about the Black Widow movie isn't the fact that it's a story that's set like 6 years earlier, and that's when it should have come out, and all of these things, and it's the last time we're going to see Natasha is just how Florence Pugh just steals that movie from the Black Widow that we knew. And when I think about that movie, I think about the Yelena Black Widow, the new Black Widow, the Black Widow we're going to have in the future. And a lot of times these characters are getting replaced for money reasons, and we're getting younger versions of it. And I don't know what the snowmobile accident was that Jeremy Renner had, but they were probably like, oh, well, we're already replacing him with Kate Bishop. So I guess that's going to work for us, isn't it? So, yeah. And look, I think that, the fact that these films have been around for this long, you're already cycling in and out of generational turnover. So you want to appeal to younger audiences. So I always get that. But I'm trying to be optimistic. The idea that in Captain America, Brave New World, Sam Wilson is going to be Captain America, but also that Harrison Ford's going to be the Red Hulk. That movie's going to have to be so garbage in the non-Red Hulk points for me to think it's bad. As long as I'm getting Red Hulk, I'm probably going to be like, oh, that's pretty fucking cool.
I'm very excited about it. I really do. I'm eternally excited. Like, it's rare that I won't watch one of the movies. So I'm a fan, and I continue. I'll put it in my hope chest and hope that it all works out, because
your Hope Van Dyne chest.
Zing.
And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up when you say how bad Secret Invasion was. I remember pausing it and saying, "Oh, they're going to have this person's power. The Super Skrull is going to have all these powers. Who I don't know that name." I'm like Googling who these characters are. It's like villains from Infinity War and shit.
Yeah,
and I was like, this is going to be dope. This fight that both these characters are going to have every power of every character from every movie. And that's going to be 5 minutes of the last episode. What the fuck are you doing? You fucking idiots.
No, I know. And that actor was well cast. He also played Bob Marley the same year in that Bob Marley movie, and you're just like, it's one of those things you're like, how was it not good? I have no idea. It's the megalopolis of the MCU.
But at least Sam Jack fucked an alien. All right. So I have to thank Christian for lending so much of his time to our little show today. Christian, please plug your plugs that you love to plug.
Absolutely. Well, if you've stuck in here for all of these apologies about the MCU, I think that you would enjoy the show that I do for the Geekscape Network, Marvel Movie Talk. We're currently going through each episode of Agatha All Along, like Andy said, so you don't have to. Please go ahead and check it out. And we definitely have a lot of fun over there. And of course, I have my personal podcast, The Bladtcast, BLADTCAST, where I've talked about films referenced here, including Joker 2 and Megalopolis in recent memory, and some familiar faces you'll see over there, people like Husey and Lucy Tightbuck. So check out The Bladtcast. And of course, the big plug over on the Who Are These Podcasts network, the Carl Network, as our pal Vinny calls it. We do Who Are These broadcasts? We do it live Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel, but you can, of course, find the audio version wherever you find podcasts. I'm glad that we finally got to do this, and that it was a very easy topic where I did absolutely no research heading into this, because it's all up here, baby.
Yeah, and, have to do it again. There's too much to get to.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, before we wrap things up, I'm pretty sure that they're not apologizing for anything that they're doing over there, so we got to do this. Unapologetic Disney shit, but I want to encourage everybody to check us out on Instagram, where we have clips of the show and clips from the news, and YouTube. I'm releasing some of our paywall content from Patreon onto YouTube for free, some of the older stuff. But in that same breath, I'll say, please go subscribe to the Patreon, where the mini show that we just did about some of the Dabbleverse drama that's unfolding is going to be available there, as well as, other exclusive content that you can check out for just $5 or $3 an episode for the video version of this show.
You let me know if anyone spends $3 just for this episode with me on it. I want to know. I don't need a cut. I'm not asking for a cut. I just want to know. Did anybody go like, yeah, I want to pay for that?
Very good. Will do. So for Christian Bladt and Joe Sixpack, I'm Trucker Andy saying,
stay sorry.